tall men, purple dresses, rip-off Jawas, flying balls, everything you need for a good cult classic, and the Gov watched it for the first time this week. It's 40 Years of Phantasm on the Scarifyer podcast.
Scream for your life! To a new world of gods and monsters.
What's wrong with you?
There's something up there. I saw it.
You got some kind of an overactive imagination or something?
I know you're not gonna believe this, but these things were here.
Oh, give me a break.
Phantasm. The delusion of a disordered mind. A phantom. A spirit. A ghost. For nearly 4 decades it has been contained, but evil always has a way of breaking free.
Tommy's gone. It's hard to believe. It was a good idea not to let your little brother come to the funeral. Yeah, I don't like this place.
Something weird is going on up there.
The funeral is about to begin, sir.
Hello, Psycho Nation, and welcome to Scarifyer, your podcast of all things horror and pop culture. I am the Ace.
And I am the Gov.
And yes, we had a little fun with the intro there, but we are truly talking about one of the greats. Everything that is wonderful about cult classics and low-budget horror movies. 40 Years of Phantasm. And Gov, you watched it for the first time.
I did. I hated it. It was terrible. No, seriously, folks, it was okay. But before we get into that, we, of course, have to go to the news with Ace. So, Ace, what do we have for news today?
Well, before we get into that, I just want everybody to know out there that the Ace is fighting a sinus infection and a pretty nasty chest cold. So, if I sound a little off today, bear with me. But enough about me. We're starting the news today with some sad news. As of this morning, as of this recording, the legend Rip Torn passed away at his home in Connecticut. He was 88 years old. No cause of death released at this time, but very, very sad. Truly one of the greats.
Sure.
Okay, moving on to some, happier stuff, more fun stuff. As always, my news comes from iHorror.com primarily. So let's go. Stranger Things, man. Breaking some serious records.
Yeah.
So, Stranger Things 3, it's being reported that on its opening day of the 4th of July, 2019, it reported 40.7 million households began viewing Season 3.
Wow.
And breaking another record, 18.2 million viewers finished the season in less than 4 days.
Whoa, unbelievable.
Samuel L. Jackson, motherfucker, has joined Chris Rock's reboot of Saw.
The more I hear about this Chris Rock reboot of Saw, the more just interested I'm just to know as much, learn as much information as much as I can.
Oh, this is incredible.
This is
going to be really fun. This is going to be cool. I mean, and I'm not even a real fan of the Saw series. I like the first 3, and I thought the rest were stupid.
You really only need the first 3.
Yes, but man, Chris Rock producing it, Samuel L. Jackson in it. Now, it didn't disclose what he's doing in it or what part he'll be playing, but it is confirmed that he's signed on.
I won't accept anything short of the puppet.
Yeah, the puppet dropping some motherfuckers. That'll be cinema gold.
You have my money.
Okay, so final topic of this week in the news. Once again, my man, Michael Myers, dominating the news all over the horror industry. So, last episode we talked about Blumhouse has announced Halloween 2
that creative title of theirs.
Shut up. Who cares as long as it's a good movie?
Mm-hmm.
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Anyway, so Blumhouse announced that Halloween 2 officially goes into production this fall with Jamie Lee Curtis back. It has now been confirmed that David Gordon Green will be behind the camera for not just one movie, but 2 movies to be filmed simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
Now, unless you're film dorks like us, not many people realize that this is kind of common practice. Superman 1 and 2, Back to the Future 2 and 3, all filmed simultaneously. But what they did was they released a movie, waited a year, let that one movie, get sunk into the ground a little bit, make its money.
It did, yeah.
What is being implied here is that Halloween 2 and 3 are not going to just come out a year, be filmed simultaneously and released a year apart. They're going to be released in the same month. So it looks like at the beginning of, we'll say, October, you're getting Halloween 2, and then by the end of October, you're getting Halloween 3. What do you think of? Do you think that, the fans are very split on this.
Yeah.
What do you think? Good idea, revolutionary, or bad idea because you're going to lose a lot of money?
Well, I think it just furthers the point that movies nowadays are just big budget TV shows.
That's a point.
That's kind of how it comes across to me. Whether it's a good idea or bad idea, I really don't know. I'm interested to see how this works out for them. It's really never been attempted anything like this.
Right.
Like you said, sure. The Christopher Reeve Superman films, the first 2 were shot simultaneously and then released a couple years apart from each other, mostly due to different directors. Back to the Future 2 and 3. Also, all 3 Lord of the Rings.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's not uncommon to do with franchise films. But same month, I don't know. They're obviously doing it. I got to see how it works, and the more important, the reason why they're doing this. Like, how does it benefit the story and the characters and stuff like that? That's really all I have to say about it. Is it's a kind of a wait and see, because it's never happened.
Right.
It could blow up in their faces completely, or as you put it could be revolutionary. What do you think?
I have a lot of mixed feelings on it. I mean, obviously, you've listened to the show. Halloween and the Halloween franchise is my all-time favorite. I'm a Michael Myers guy. So hearing that we're not getting 1 but 2 Halloween movies with Jamie Lee Curtis and David Gordon Green after how happy I was with the last one, to me, it's score. But I'm a super fan. I'm going to go see anything they put out.
Right.
What bothers me from the non-super fan perspective is I'm going to be the guy in the line at the movie theater having to explain to the moron that goes to see the third movie first that, no, you got to go see the other movie that was released a week before. That's going to be annoying. That's going to confuse fans. That's going to confuse general public. And from, life of the franchise, I'm concerned that they're not going to, especially if the movies are good, that they're not going to be able to capitalize on how much they can actually make and how successful they can actually be with this movie. Because again, Halloween 2 can be fantastic, but you're only giving it 2, maybe 3 weeks to kind of roast in the oven, so to speak.
Yeah.
And really, make some money, and then you're gonna, boom, Halloween 3 or whatever they decide to call it after that. Maybe Halloween 3 is not as good as Halloween 2.
Right.
Did you just kill your franchise? So mixed feelings from me. I mean, as a fan, I'm stoked. 2 movies. I was super happy with the first one. I can't wait to see it. But thinking it from a general audience and a business perspective, let's see what happens.
I mean, yeah, yeah. You know, when you think about it that way, totally, you're going to kill buzz of Halloween 2, knowing that another movie is coming out weeks later.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And before you really even had a run of the first movie having its time, you know, its box office run, it's going to be competing with itself.
Sure.
Ultimately. And but again, like, we don't really know the aspects of this movie. Why are they doing it this way?
Well,
is it one large movie that is just too large that they needed to split it, and instead of waiting a year like most of those movies do, they just fuck it, put it in the same month?
True.
You know.
You know, and to go back to the first one, David Gordon Green wanted to film 2 movies at once.
Yeah.
But, you know, being it was the retcon reboot, whatever you want to call it, Blumhouse and Universal decided, you know what, before we get too carried away, let's just focus on the one movie. They had some, you know, rough test screenings. They went and fixed it. Again, for me, the movie worked out great. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. Hopefully, this doesn't get, you know, shown in a negative light. And, you know, it doesn't hurt the franchise. It doesn't hurt future movies.
Well, sure, you got to worry about Michael Myers fatigue at that point, you know.
Yeah, well,
you just had his, you just had a Halloween movie, and now there's another one, same month.
But again, you know, maybe there's a rhyme or reason. Maybe there's a brilliant marketing campaign behind it that we just don't know yet.
Exactly.
So only time will tell.
And because it's never been done before, we just have to wait and see.
Scarifyer.
All right, so it's 40 years of the Tall Man, and we got that backstory coming at you for Phantasm. The idea for the original film came to creator Don Coscarelli in a dream. One night in his late teens, he dreamed of fleeing down an endlessly long marble corridor pursued by a chrome sphere intent on penetrating his skull with a wicked needle. After seeing the jump scare reactions in his film Kenny & Company, Coscarelli knew that his next feature had to be a horror film. With financial backing from his father and a script inspired from Something Wicked Comes This Way by legendary Ray Bradbury, Phantasm was released regionally with only 500 prints, but would go on to gross $12 million on a $300,000 budget, solidifying itself as a cult classic.
So Don Coscarelli is from Long Beach, California. He wrote, directed, co-produced, edited Phantasm on a shoestring budget with help from a tight-knit network of friends and family. He was only 23/24 because Phantasm takes an entire year to film. It was filmed from November 77 to November 78. So he has a birthday in between there. But what's really interesting, it was Coscarelli's resume prior to Phantasm. So remember, keep in mind that he's only 23/24 when he does Phantasm.
Yeah.
So he has 2 movies prior to that. Both are released from Universal. Both get some critical acclaim. So his first movie is 1975, Jim, the World's Greatest, which was followed by 1976's Kenny & Company. Both flopped, so Universal kind of walked away from them after that, you know, prior to Phantasm. But here is something just unbelievable. His first movie, Jim, the World's Greatest, only 19 years old.
Wow.
I mean, Gov, how mad does that make you? I mean, seriously, because here we are. I'm 32. You're 29. And you and I have been trying to figure this show business shit out since we were 15, if younger.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've had some ups, we've had some downs, but haven't even come close to that. He does it when he's 19.
Well, the only thing I could say is, first of all, I wish I had a rich father. Second of all, I just wish I had one of those groundbreaking ideas that, I'm sure he had, or like our other friends had, who decided to set up a security cam and have their friends slam doors and stomp around the house for an hour and a half, thus creating paranormal activity. Go fuck yourself.
Well, in the spirit...
Pay my actors and pizza and Red Bull.
Our day's coming, Gov. Don't ever forget.
No, I mean...
Lugosi, Karloff, Alan Rickman... all over 40 before they got their big break. Yeah. Our day's coming.
Hopefully. I mean, it doesn't really make me mad. Good for him.
I know.
The guy obviously knew what he was doing.
I'm just joking. I'm trying to get something out of you.
No, I know. But, yeah.
I mean, kudos to him.
Good for him.
You have Universal Studios release your movie at 19 years old? Holy shit.
Yeah. No, that's...
What an accomplishment.
Yeah.
So he's obviously, a horror lover, a sci-fi lover, and he intentionally wanted to adapt Ray Bradbury's Something Wicked Comes This Way into a feature-length film, but it had already been optioned. It actually would be released in 1983 under Jack Clayton. So what he does is he takes his love of horror, he takes his sci-fi sensibility, and he creates this dark fairy tale we now know as Phantasm.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually pretty cool because I'm sure it's going to be brought up again with the little minions in this movie. Another George Lucas move. George Lucas wanted to adapt Flash Gordon, was denied the rights, and he was forced to create this little movie called Star Wars.
Right.
I mean, same kind of situation.
Creative people, man. Creative people.
Yeah.
Before, again, this is the Phantasm show, but, let's give this guy some credit. He's done a lot. So not only has he done all 5 Phantasm movies, he's also, after Phantasm, went on to do another huge cult classic, The Beastmaster, 1982.
Yep.
With its sequels. More recently, another cult classic, Bubba Hotep.
Oh, yeah.
2002.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this guy's done it.
Sure.
And he's done it all. And obviously, we're talking Phantasm today because that is his legacy. So this movie was, total indie. I mean, like, there was no nothing professional about this.
Oh, sure.
So, like I said before, it was filmed over the span of a year between November 77 and November 78, with its cast and crew working flat out each weekend, taking on multiple roles on a deferred paid basis.
It's a crying shame. We gotta get new agents. We're getting screwed.
And then after principal production's done, we're talking 6 to 8 weeks of post production.
Yeah.
So I mean, these guys were waiting for some money. The budget ended up being an estimate $30K, so kind of in the ballpark of Halloween.
Sure.
And man, I mean, indie filmmaking and a will to make a movie. 1 year, weekends only. No guaranteed of pay.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you got to love about indies. It's passion driven. It's not financially driven. You know what I mean?
Right. So, interesting opening to the movie. We see a lady in a lavender dress getting a little freaky with a character named Tommy. In true horror movie fashion, Tommy gets murdered. But what's really creepy about this is as he's getting it on, he starts seeing flashes of our tall man.
Yeah.
How did you feel about this scene?
I felt about the scene kind of like how I felt about the entire movie, really. I thought it was a strong opening, and it kind of established what we would soon later become, that this is a dream, that this is a nightmare. I do like the idea of, again, going with that element of something wicked comes this way, of that there's something watching you or looking at you, something subliminal, I think, with the whole shots of the tall man and stuff like that. And it creates this atmosphere of, death right up front by having this, sexual exchange in a cemetery.
Right.
So already you're setting your pace. And I thought it was...
super taboo.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was a strong opening, a good way to open the film to set up that this is something definitely surreal.
After that, we see a funeral, and this is where we first see Jody, Reggie, and Mike. Jody and Mike, they're brothers who had just recently lost their parents.
Mm-hmm.
The younger brother, Mike, clearly struggles with that. Mm-hmm. And Ice Cream Man Reggie, the hippie friend. Mm-hmm. What do you think about these characters and the dynamic between them?
Well, first of all, I love the brother dynamic.
Yes.
I thought that was really strong. I thought it really carries the movie. Again, a 13-year-old dealing with death, it's the death of their parents and then the death of Tommy, to which he was a friend, right? I believe. Yeah. Yep. So, and then Jody goes to the funeral, but he chooses not to bring Mike with him. Again, you got this great element of an older brother protecting his younger brother,
right?
Which I'm sure everybody in the world can relate to.
If you're an older brother, absolutely,
and then you follow, the whole movie is through Michael's eyes, and you see how he views his brother, how he views their friend Reggie, and how close they are, a tight-knit group they are. I loved Reggie, only because he's so uncharacteristic for the character he plays. He plays a very strong supporting character, and then he would later go on to be almost the protagonist in the films, almost like the protector character. He kind of fills the mantle for Jody in the rest of the films, and he's first established in this one. But he is so against type.
Right.
Here you got like a balding hippie ice cream man who just likes to, get high and strum his guitar and stuff like that. And then he ends up in many ways becoming the MVP.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I liked all three of these characters a lot. In a very fantasy-driven, surrealistic movie, these three characters, to me, are grounded in reality.
Right. Let's move on to the tall man.
Oh, yeah.
Horror icon.
Yeah.
Personified. So, we first see the tall man in image of sex with a lady in lavender.
Lady in lavender.
Mike first sees him as he's unloading a casket and seemingly effortlessly picks the casket up by himself, which makes Mike think that there's something else going on here, something really weird. His home's the iconic mausoleum, the beautiful. And by the way, I read about this researching this movie, that set was literally plywood.
Well, it was a warehouse with newly minted marble floors, and they created the marble walls and everything with plywood and paper, I believe.
Yeah, it's marble colored paper.
Yeah, marble printed paper. Yeah, and plywood. And
can you imagine?
Yeah.
Yeah, just one hallway.
Yeah.
That's all they needed.
Mm-hmm.
So, the tall man himself, real life, real name is Lawrence Rory Guy. So, he has an interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
He originally is known as a music journalist.
Mm-hmm.
And, part of his credentials were writing, some liner notes for low, unknown musical acts such as Frank Sinatra and the Beatles.
Oh, no big deal.
What a resume.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's what a thing to have on a resume. It must be like a rule if you read on someone's resume, oh yeah, worked for and with the Beatles.
Yeah,
you get the job.
Yeah,
the employer was like, no, dude, you have my job. So, holy shit.
Yeah,
who would have known? Tall man wrote liner notes for the fucking Beatles.
Yeah.
Well, obviously he didn't stay in music journalism forever. He eventually transitions to TV and movies. He adopts the stage name, as we all know, Angus Scrim. I'm sorry.
Those names.
And and he becomes forever the iconic tall man. At 6'4", he plays the tall man in all 5 Phantasm movies.
Yeah, he saw it through all the way to the end.
Right up to his death in 2016. What are your thoughts on the tall man?
I love the tall man. Again, I know I just saw this movie, so in many ways I'm a novice on this, but I'm not completely blind to it. I've heard about it. I've seen it pop up in magazines, on the internet, what have you. I've even seen scenes of it in compilation DVDs, like your Boogeymen from 2001 or something like that. So I knew Phantasm, or knew of it, and I certainly knew of the tall man, and I always found him to be interesting, and I always found him to be a very underrated horror icon.
Oh, sure.
I think he deserves to be on a mantle with your Michael Myers, your Jasons, your Freddys, and stuff like that. But he's very much the underrated. He's kind of like the weird uncle you keep in the corner. And the best part about him is he is so impactful with so little.
Yes.
He doesn't need pounds of makeup. He doesn't need knives on his hands. He doesn't have to talk in a weird voice. He just has this presence about him. Again, being the tall man, standing at 6'4", and they even gave him lifters in the movie to make him even taller, and his gaunt appearance and stuff like that, and that raised eyebrow and the deep manner of which he speaks, and just everything about him is intimidating. He doesn't even have to say 2 words. Just watching him walk, just watching him stare, it really gets under your skin. And very much of Angus Scrimm's performance reminded me of Karloff.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, and a lot of the movie reminds me of that period in horror movies.
Right.
It has a very classic feel to it, very gothic horror and stuff like that, and it's only amplified by the tall man.
I'll tell you, one thing I really appreciate about how this character is portrayed, we enter the era of the horror villain, the slasher icon, the slasher villain. A lot of this, unfortunately, was spurred on by Michael Myers. Mm-hmm. But
that was still new at the time.
It was still new, but, the copycats were coming. But one thing that the tall man does that a lot of the icons that followed him don't, is he ran.
Yeah.
True. And you know what? There is nothing more terrifying than when Mike starts to run and you see the tall man go right after him. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not like, Leatherface where he's kind of doing a trot.
Yeah.
It's not Michael Myers where he's doing a stealthy stalk. Mm-hmm. It's not Jason where he's doing a power walk.
Yeah.
It's not, Freddy Krueger popping out and then using his telepathic, popping out one end and then the other.
Yeah.
I mean, he ran after that fucking kid, and he wanted to kill him.
Sure.
And you really felt that he was trying to kill that kid.
Yeah, I mean, he's the mad mortician. Death is his business.
Yeah, and I mean, you just, especially as, they went on through the 80s,
yeah,
you just didn't get that. It was, you saw an effort. Mm-hmm. So I appreciated it. But like all horror icons, our horror villain has to have a weapon. He has one of the most unique and iconic weapons in the entire horror genre. It's not a kitchen knife. It's not a machete. It's not finger knives. It's not the damn chainsaw. It's a ball.
I've got big balls. I've got big balls. And there's such big balls. And there's such big balls. And he's got big balls. And she's got big balls. We've got big balls.
No, I'm talking about...
Well, it's a little bit more than just a ball.
I'm talking about... No, I joke. I'm talking about the Sentinel Sphere. I mean, what a unique weapon for a character.
Yeah.
A sphere that, pops out 2 blades, sticks into your head, and then pops out a drill to drill right through your forehead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Unique is an understatement. I mean, certainly.
But it works.
Sure.
And it worked well.
Sure. And again, going back to talking about the backstory earlier in this thing, that sphere was the entire jumping point for this movie.
Yeah.
That was a part of Coscarelli's original dream.
Right.
That fucking ball chasing him down a corridor. You know what I mean? And
right.
to implement it into the film in an effective way with the budget that they had to make a flying sphere work.
I mean, you're talking about, guys who literally threw a silver ball down a hallway, then played it back in reverse, and that's it.
Yeah.
They
would tape the whole thing of it going into the guy's head. They would tape it to his forehead and pull it back
on invisible string.
And then again reverse. The film.
I mean, brilliant.
It's intuitive filmmaking. It's working with what you have when you have nothing.
Right. We've talked about the characters, the iconic characters, the weapons. So let's talk a little bit about Phantasm itself in the theaters as it's presented to the public.
Mm-hmm.
Phantasm's finishing its production. Again, it takes a year to make.
Mm-hmm.
With the film about 60% complete, we see the first trailer for one of the greatest movies of all time.
A billion years in the making. Star Wars.
And a little controversy brews because we see, what we now know as the Star Wars Jawas. Phantasm has their own little hooded mini minions.
Yeah.
Obviously, Coscarelli did not rip off Star Wars. He couldn't have known.
Despite popular belief.
This clearly must have upset him royally. He's in the middle of making a movie and he's basically seeing his characters on another screen.
Yeah.
What do you got anything to add to that?
Honestly, I don't see it as him copying Star Wars, even if he had the opportunity. I see it as a filmmaker who has zero to no money trying to finish his film, and what's one of the cheapest costumes you can do? That's a brown hood with a blacked out face. You know what I mean? And from what I understand, I could be wrong. I'm not a Star Wars enthusiast, but that's the reason why Lucas went that route with the Jawas. It was cheap. It cost nothing to do a brown cloak with a hood. Once you get further into the Phantasm movies, you see the intended vision for these little dwarf creatures or whatever. I don't even know if they gave them a name. And it's very different from what you have in the first movie. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. One, the backlash of people pointing fingers saying you copied Lucas. And for the fact that they actually had some monies to visualize these characters. And this sort of thing isn't the first and last time it's happened. You know what I mean? One of my favorite cult movies that I ironically enjoy is 87's Masters of the Universe film. Constantly got accused of ripping off Star Wars, especially with Skeletor's henchmen. And really, they weren't trying to rip off stormtroopers. They needed generic robotic creatures for He-Man to fight because Mattel had this stupid prerequisite saying that He-Man couldn't kill anybody.
Right.
So you got to work with what you got, sort of thing. And if it comes off as a nod or an homage or a flat-out rip-off, sometimes it's, it is what it is. And that's what you're dealt with, the hand you're dealt with.
All right, so let me pose this question at you. So, Phantasm comes out in 79. It's a genre cross of horror and sci-fi. Well, right before its release, we get to groundbreaking sci-fi and horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Star Wars and Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
Does this affect Phantasm negatively or positively?
My opinion, I think it's positive.
Okay.
Only because they were right there, as you put it, as the two monsters of the genres were coming out, Halloween and Star Wars, and they were right there with the fortune of being, part of both genres. With how little exposure the film got in terms of its marketing, how few prints were made of the film, and how they had to distribute it regionally because they went with a regional distribution company, which was Avco Embassy.
Yes, they circulated 500 prints and 500 prints only.
Exactly. The fact that with only 500 prints, regional territories, they were able to gross $12 million. I think two things were into play. One, the powerhouse movies, and two, excellent word of mouth. That's the only way a movie like this would contain its status as a cult classic. The only way it would make $12 million in the box office. I think it benefited it, personally.
I can't really see the benefit that Star Wars had on it. Star Wars was, a juggernaut on its own. I can see where Halloween...
Again, but it's not really like a Star Wars movie. It crosses genres, and there are sci-fi fantasy elements to it, but I don't really see it as like Star Wars. I see that more as like Invasion of the Body Snatchers or Invaders from Mars kind of stuff. Not really space operas. I mean, I get it because of the cultural impact Star Wars had. Anybody and everybody was looking for a sci-fi movie, whether it was laced in horror or not.
Right.
But I really don't see the comparison. To Halloween, sure, but...
Well, I mean... I guess not comparing it to Star Wars, obviously, in a literal sense, but comparing it to, in the fact that it's, Star Wars comes out, huge sci-fi. So anything sci-fi from now on is getting compared.
Okay.
To Star Wars.
Yeah.
And with what Phantasm is, does that affect it negatively? I think it may. I mean, or has no direct impact. I mean, it's tough to really call. Halloween, on the other hand, being an independent and being this diamond in the rough that it turned out to be, I think that hugely positively impacted Phantasm.
Sure.
Because you got every studio was looking for their indie film to make them millions upon millions of dollars.
Exactly. When you're spending only a couple K on a movie and it's making millions, every studio was like, get me one of those. I want one of those. We need one of those.
Right.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Another topic that's it's been forever been debated about the Phantasm movie, mainly the original one, is the ending.
Yeah.
The I call it the Who Shot JR ending.
Dallas ending.
Where we go through roughly an hour and 40 minutes of bullshit to find out it was all a dream. Some people like it, some people hate it. What does the Gov think?
The Gov loves it. In fact, when I started watching it, again, going to the opening scene with the lady in lavender and the subliminal imagery and the way the movie's edited and the effects, Mike gets his hand caught in the thing, it won't let go, and then he takes it out and the thing just disappears and he doesn't even notice, he notices it disappears, but it doesn't affect him in any way. Very early on, I realized this film was a dream. Yeah, I didn't have to spoil myself. I didn't have to read ahead. I'm like, this is about a child having a nightmare, and I think it works for the film because when you think about it, a child dealing with death, this is how he would respond to it subconsciously. He would do nothing but dream about a creepy mortician stalking him because he personifies death, literally. He would be obsessed with the mortuary, the graveyards and stuff like that. And then as you come to find out that he's having this nightmare on the eve of his brother's death, the brother in his nightmare is going to be a large part of the dream, because that's what he's dreaming about. That's what he's lost, and that's what's on his mind. I think it helps the movie immensely. It also helps it make sense where, if you're taking it literally, you're like, this makes absolutely no sense. You don't know what they're going for. You don't know what they're trying to accomplish. You don't even know what's happening. All of a sudden you look into a door and you're like on Mars or something, which I heard, I guess the tall man is supposed to be an alien creature of some sort. I don't know.
From what I hear, the backstory of that is that the tall man kills people, puts them in those containers, and then sends them to another planet, and they become slaves.
Okay, so, fair enough.
Yeah.
Again, going with that invaders from Mars type deal. So again, like if you're looking at the movie on its surface, makes zero sense. Have no idea what they're trying to accomplish. Have no idea what they're doing until Michael wakes up at the end, and you realize, oh, it's all been a dream. Goes downstairs, talks with Reggie. Reggie's still there. He's not dead. Which, again, you can say, like, with all these people dying in Michael's life, he would dream about the next person closest to him being the next one to die. That's how I interpreted Reggie's death when it turns out to be bogus. Right. I think that it helped the movie immensely. I don't think it pissed people off nearly to the extent as JR. That was simply to... retcon and get the character back on television because he was so popular.
Right.
This one, I felt like that's where they were going. That's what the whole point of the movie was. What didn't help, in my opinion, was the Carrie ending. The last final jump scare of the tall man in the mirror going, boy.
Whoa, come on, man. You got to have that one last scare.
No, I get it, but, it's all been done. Woo-hoo-hoo. You know what I mean? I get it. And yes, sure. And then it blurs the line of reality of, maybe it wasn't a dream. Now we can have sequels.
Right.
But with the film living inside of a dream, I thought it was fine.
You know what? I think when I first watched it, years and years ago, it bothered me because I looked at it as a kind of a cheesy cop-out ending to not have to explain yourself. As the years gone by and I've learned more about the movie, I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. I like it a lot more. Mm-hmm. So, and the scare at the end, horror movie guys, you got to have that one last scare.
Yeah.
It's a part of the rules. Ask Randy.
Mm-hmm.
So... final thoughts on Phantasm, Gup.
Final thoughts. Like I said, it's a solid movie. It's I enjoyed it about as much as I thought I would. Again, with a lot of movies, though, the production of it is way more interesting than the film.
Sure,
in my opinion.
Me too. I completely agree with that.
I liked researching this film a lot.
Yes.
When it came to actually watching it, it was all right. I understand why people like it, and there's a lot of aspects that I really liked of it. The gothic horror atmosphere, the surrealism, the tall man, of course.
Right.
But will it resonate with me in terms as a movie that I put on continually, or at least around Halloween time? Probably not. Maybe once in a blue moon. But I definitely appreciate the film, appreciate what it did, and I respect its status as a cult classic.
I'm in the same boat as you. Not a movie I watch regularly. I do enjoy it. I think it's a fun film. It's a different film, for sure. It's not your typical horror movie. It's not your typical sci-fi movie. It's got a lot to it. Again, like you, I really enjoyed researching the backstory of this movie and all the players involved. And overall, good. It is what it is. By name, cult classic. Mm-hmm. Couldn't have a better description of a movie like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the only thing that's left is to rank. But before you and I rank, let's see what the people in the rest of the universe thought of Phantasm. So the Internet Movie Database rates Phantasm, the original, at 6.8 out of 10. Above average.
Above average.
Not terrible.
Sure.
Rotten Tomatoes gives it a 73%.
Mm-hmm.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad.
That's a C. Sure.
Yeah. Metacritic, similar to Rotten Tomatoes, 72.
Mm-hmm.
And all the maniacs out in Google land, 87% of them like this movie.
Fair enough.
So, decent ratings from the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Gov, what say you?
Okay, I'll round it up with a 3. I was leaning toward a 2.5, but I'm going to give it an above average. I'll give it a 3 because I didn't at any means dislike this movie. You know what I mean? It's like I just said before, it's not something that's really going to stick with me and latch onto me. I'm not going to become a fanatic with this film like I know a lot of people do cherish this film, but I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed doing the work on this episode. I enjoyed watching the movie. It had some great elements to it. The characters were fantastic. The acting was sufficient, considering the kind of actors they had to go with. A lot of carryovers from Coscarelli's other films.
Right.
Angus Scrimm, man, you can't beat that, and you can't replicate that either. Yeah. He made that character so bizarre and so creepy and scary and stuff like that, really channeling a Karloff-esque performance. So yeah, for the governor's money, I'm going to give it a solid 3 out of 5. I enjoyed it.
All right. And as for me, I'm going to give this movie a 3.5. I think the movie's fun. It's a unique story. I appreciate the look of it. I'm impressed with, how much you can do with so little and, what they are able to accomplish. And Angus Scrimm really sends this movie home for me. The tall man and the sphere, just so iconic in the realm of horror. I'm comfortable at giving it a 3.5.
So that's our take on Phantasm 40 years later.
But we really want to know what you think, so please like, subscribe, share, comment, email us. Tell us what you think about Phantasm.
And we won't bust your balls.
Hey Psycho Nation, it's the Ace here, and I'm going to let you in on a little secret right now. I have my own side business, that's right. I actually have a very talented wife that I put her to work so I can make money off of her. It's called Lambert Horror and Pop Culture. You can find us on Facebook, but this message is specifically for our fans in upstate New York. On July 13th, from 11 to 4 p.m., we will have a table at the Ford and Superstop Classic Car Show. Now, what is Lambert Horror and Pop Culture? Well, we make customized pop culture products. So, what we got is hand-painted peg dolls. We got keychains. We got magnets. We got bookmarks. We got all sorts of goodies. So, if you're looking for a special gift for a super fan, we might have something special for you. So, come check us out. The Ace will be there in person with my lovely wife. Support local vendors and come have a good time. Check the cars out.
Okay, Gov, so we're done with Phantasm. Most important question of the day. What's next for Scarifyer?
Well, with this being July and summer is in full swing and the beaches are packed, everybody is swimming, having a good time being outside, we are going to take a look at the movie that made you afraid to go into the water.
The first time.
Not Jaws, but the Universal classic, Creature from the Black Lagoon, a very inspirational film that started a lot of genres.
Yes, Psycho Nation, we are getting back into our horror movie time machine, going back 65 years, talking Gilman.
Yep.
I'm super excited about this. The classic monsters are my passion, so getting the first full actual episode of a classic monster makes the Ace very happy. And it's also been requested by some of you people. A lot of people talk to me personally. They keep Ace, when are you going to do some classic monsters? Well, here we go. First of many.
Our first dip into the water with the original Creature from the Black Lagoon.
One of the greatest of all times. So, for Scarifyer, I'm the Ace.
I'm the Gov. And of course, remember to like, share, and subscribe to Scarifyer.
See you next time.